The earliest version of the Well-Tempered Clavier Book I that we know of contains much shorter pieces. In this video we will explore how Bach expanded his music and try to understand what may have happened during his creative process. The first 15 preludes form a fascinating display of different applications of arpeggiated figures. We will focus on two preludes that in their early version both consist only of 15 bars. The sixth prelude stands out from the famous opening piece by using shifting hand positions and triplets in the right hand. The early version has irregular episodes, short but perfect in themselves. It ends without a Picardy major third on the last chord. Would serve well as one of the 15 inventions, the collection with which this cycle is deeply connected. It is two-part, sophisticatedly didactic and artistically satisfying. You could say leave it as it is and appreciate it as a perfect miniature. But Bach added 11 additional bars in the final version, simply improvising a new section onto the original piece. It was an expansion that gave the miniature the structural weight the collection demanded. Like the sixth, Prelude 15 also originally consisted of 15 bars. In terms of playing technique, they are closely related through the triplet figuration, but here the pattern alternates between the hands. Unlike the sixth prelude, this 15th piece was expanded by only 4 extra measures. Yet in this case, the expansion transformed the composition more profoundly. The early version seems more like a hastily written cascade of ideas. In contrast, the final version uses a few additions to create a continuous flow and a carefully balanced dramatic shape. Why only 4 extra bars for such beautiful, inspiring, vibrant and potent material? We obviously cannot look inside Bach's head, but if we approach the question from a broader perspective, we might still be able to find some answers. The answer is not found in melody and motifs, but in the mathematics of a matrix. What is music? Bach's close friend Gottfried Walther said it's a heavenly philosophical science based on mathematics. The earliest surviving version of the collection is called the Konwitschny Manuscript. It was lost in 1962, but fortunately we still have the photographs. The two preludes discussed were not the only pieces that were shorter. We can place all the movements into an overview and compare their lengths directly with the final autograph. What is there to see? It is the matrix in its early unfinished state, fully interacting with 4 structural forces that define the final length of each piece. Matrix functions as a compositional design framework that dictates how many measures each piece still requires. This tool consists of 6 double columns, in which the pieces are not arranged by key. That looks confusing at first glance, even at second, yet order can be discerned in it. That organization can be used as a sufficient explanatory model to calculate the final bar counts after revision. Let's start with the final group, which was already complete in Konwitschny. Its 2 vertical columns each have 174 bars. The first force that came into action was vertical, mandating every single column to reach this exact total. The second force operates as an internal grouping over these double columns, where one block totals 116 measures and the other 232. 6 groups alternate this subdivision, top versus bottom. With these two forces combined, we can already determine for several columns the final dimension totals of pieces to be extended. The third force is horizontal, targeting an overarching total of 522 measures across the lines. The fourth force is a structural grouping that likewise generates that same constant of 522. But through symmetrical configurations of corner pieces, middle pieces, and intervening cells. This way, determining the expansions for individual pieces was downsized to a local question. It is a fill-in-the-blanks exercise, or more precisely, adding to complete the vertical and horizontal goal totals guided by the central groups. Thus, the lengths in bars are defined by cross indicators, and the necessary steps are suggested by the blueprint. With Konwitschny, we are witnessing the final phase of Bach's design. From this, we can also deduce several things about the initial phase. The subtotals are all divisible by the organizing and prime number 29. In addition, the preludes in particular require expansion, which, given their nature, was an easier task. Prelude 6 was extended by 11 bars, and Prelude 15 by 4, to fulfill their well-tempered place in the matrix. The fluid preludes proved remarkably elastic, while the rigid fugues bent with more reluctance. The adjustments in the fugues are limited to a single measure. The totals of each fugue will have served as anchor points in the initial phase. Every fourth prelude and fugue pair acts as a structural anchor, a monumental heavyweight engineered through calculated art. The measure totals of Hinges fugue pieces are divisible by 29. The 8 with 87 bars is 3 times 29, while the 12th with 58 bars is 2 times 29. Bach did not just compose music, he engineered a monument and a philosophical treatise. Academic analysis stops here, bounded by what it cannot strictly document. But to truly understand Bach, we must examine his world with both an artistic heart and a creative mind. And so, cold-blooded, we enter a more speculative area. The number 29 does not appear to be a random coincidence. It emerges as a recurring structural element in the architecture of the collection. Bach concludes his autograph with Soli Deo Gloria, a devotional phrase that, substituting letters for numbers, counts to 29. This value is identical to the sum of his own initials, JSB. A structural correspondence where the composer's initials and his devotional signature coincide. This does not prove a code, but it just suggests that numbers, structure and meaning may not have been separate concepts for Bach. The seemingly random arrangement of pieces in the chart may contain a similar symbolic layer. It begins in the upper left corner with Prelude 5 and Prelude 15. In the keys of D major and G major, the musical letters D and G form a possible Deo Gloria signature, not at the end of the collection, but at its very beginning. We can also apply this speculative excursion into underlying motifs to the actual beginning of the cycle on the cover, the title. Tuning brought a disturbing conflict with intuitive logic fully into view. Each pitch defined its own focal point, seeking to influence and reshape the surrounding notes. The building blocks of the physical world, assembled by God using whole numbers, turned out to yield fractions when trying to close the harmonic circle. While well-tempered tuning practically solved the acoustic problem of the intervals, it exposed a profound tension within the divine worldview. How to tune practical friction into divine perfection. Bach's architectural response is a philosophically satisfying answer to that problem, both compositional and mathematical. Demonstrating that an irregular collection can rest upon a solid fixed constant, he suggested that the fractions in the tuning were merely a surface appearance and did not imply a world built on broken numbers. It addressed the fundamental intellectual tension between mathematical reality and the ideal of a divinely ordered universe. At an underlying meta level, regular order can indeed be found in seemingly random numbers, providing a comforting logic for the sensed disturbance in the force. When Bach looked at the celestial dome above Köthen's night sky, he could conclude with pleasure that he had devised, under divine guidance, an analogous model, giving the chaotic distribution of stars a foundation of whole numbers. It was enough to believe that the fractions were not infractions upon the divine order. The result is a vision in which apparent irregularity becomes part of a larger harmony. The cosmic and divine order is fully restored after all, mapped in the majestic metaphor of the mathematics underlying the matrix. We have now reviewed various orderings to give the extensions of Prelude 6 and 15 context. But Bach's world of thought extended even more comprehensively than what we have examined so far. Bach composed 15 Inventions and 15 Symphonias, serving as a kind of well-tempered clavier light and a stepping stone for his keyboard students. Prelude 15 acts as a pivotal piece, bridging the structural layout of the well-tempered clavier with the beginner pieces of the Inventions and Symphonias. It is a cornerstone in a subset that connects both sets in proportional relationships. Combined, the bar counts of these interacting blocks lock into a perfect 2-to-1 ratio, the pure definition and acoustics of a perfect octave. This matrix sings. Prelude 6, Prelude 15 and the triplet revised first invention became a unity that can be understood as a symbolic theological Trinity, another Deo Gloria manifestation, expressing the spiritual dimension of the design. Returning to our opening question, what went through Bach's mind when he expanded these pieces? He saw technical and thematic kinship in the 6th prelude in D minor and the 15th prelude in G major. These preludes initially had a structure and length that did not differ much from that of the Inventions. The fundamental principle of the collection is well-tempered tuning. Through imperfect tuning, Bach achieved a perfectly closed harmonic circle. Bach came up with a practical answer to that framework, but also with a profound philosophical justification. To this end, he designed a proportional plan that placed the length of the pieces in a logical relationship, appearing at first glance irregular in its final form, just as the tuning itself is well-tempered. Behind every calculated bar and shift of the hand, Bach left us a message that true perfection is never rigid, but beautifully balanced. Prelude 6 and 15, initially matching miniatures, became twin designs, interlocked by a structural law. Bach tempered the intervals and warped the bar totals, closing the circle to fulfill the architectural vision of 29.